Hey everybody, welcome to the Mark Parham podcast. You can find me on Spotify by just typing in Mark Parham podcast, and then also on Apple by typing in Mark Parham podcast, and I should pop up. So I want to talk about what I saw. I saw a clip on it was on Twitter. Now it's called X, and it was a man on CNBC, and he was from a foreign country. But he was talking about, America in speech and all this other stuff and, stuff that, has to do with the First Amendment. And the thing about some of these leaders from foreign countries or businessmen or whoever, it's crazy that, folks always want to come to America and tell Americans, how we should feel and what we should do and the type of laws we need and stuff like that. And, my thing about the whole, free speech argument is that, without free speech, America isn't America. If we sit up and allow the First Amendment to just be trampled on, then America would not be the country it is. I mean, the great thing about America, even if you like a president, if you don't like a president, if you don't like a leader or just whoever, you have the right to speak out and, express yourself. And when you go to some of these other countries, I mean, they want to censor the internet. They want to do a lot of things. And so in America, it's very important that we protect the First Amendment. It's very important. And I don't think some Americans realize, how important the First Amendment is. And we're in a country where we're used to having freedom for so long, with us being able to say certain things and stuff like that, that we don't sometimes, think about that. And so, it's really important when we see folks, talking about, stripping away some of our free speech laws and stuff like that. It's very important for us to, push back and say no. And I'm so happy because, Sean Ryan, who's a huge podcaster, he, put out a tweet where basically he was like, this isn't cool. And I saw just so many other folks that were saying the same thing. So again, that's one thing that Americans agree on. People that are messing with First Amendment or want to mess with the First Amendment and censor the internet and say, that Americans shouldn't be saying certain things, that doesn't go well in a lot of Americans' mind. And I'm so happy about that. Like, we might disagree on politics. There's some folks that are Republican. There's some people that are Democrat. There's some folks that are independent. There's left-wing folks, right-wing folks. But one thing that brings us all together is free speech. And I'm so happy. It brings a smile. It's just amazing that so many folks on X pushed back. And, it's, you look at some of these television stations, a lot of these folks on television or these people that own media companies, some of these folks, they would be happy for the internet to be censored, because then that would make them more money on their television network. And so, I'm so happy, and it brings a smile to my face that, Americans are not going for, as they say, the okie doke. Because as soon as we let people mess with certain laws to protect, our freedom and free speech, then, the next thing you'll have folks and powerful leaders and people in America try to, strip other laws and rules and things like that. And so, I tell anybody who's listening to this, if you're a person where you're seeing things in your community that aren't going right, if you're, you don't like, some of the politicians that are, putting certain laws in place and things like that, run for the Senate, run to be a mayor, be a part of your city council, do something, speak out. If you don't have time to do all those things, and let's just say you're a busy mom or dad, go to your social media account and maybe post a video or make a podcast or something. But, we're just at a point in America where we can't sit back and let, freedom of speech just go out the window. And as soon as that happens, then we're going to, America's not going to be America. It really isn't. And I don't think people realize that, because once they can mess with, free speech, or once these leaders can mess with free speech, then you're going to have them tell you that, well, you know what, certain musicians can't perform. You're going to have them tell you what folks can say, in public venues. It's going to be a mess, and it's going to be a huge just disaster. I mean, so, if you're listening to this, and I'm going to say it again, make a podcast, make a video. Like, when you hear something crazy that one of these leaders or politicians is saying, make a podcast, a video, get on Twitter, like, say something, because it's very important that people speak out. And believe it or not, your voice is being, your voice and opinions are being heard. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, well, you know what, if I put out a YouTube video or make a podcast, nobody's paying attention. Okay, yeah, you're not going to necessarily be the next Sean Ryan or Candace Owens, or maybe you are. But if you don't have a huge fan base like that, believe it or not, you might put out a video that might go viral, that might inspire a lawmaker or something like that. And so, never think that, your voice isn't being heard or people aren't paying attention to you. And right now, it's more important than ever. And perfect example, this is, off to the side, but you look at the situation that's happening in, Minnesota with fraud. Look at how one independent journalist was able to expose so much stuff that's been happening for years, where Republicans and Democrats, I mean, even though people are always getting on their Democrats, but Republicans in that state chose to look the other way. And it took one individual to say, you know what, I'm going to sit up and, make a video, put this on the internet. I mean, you've had some, when I was looking at, I think it was Fox News in Minnesota or something like that, they've been talking about this problem since 2013. And here it took somebody who's internet savvy to say, oh, you know what, I'm going to go down there and post a video on the internet and expose what's really going on. And so that's why it's important for, independent journalists or just people who are concerned to have these free speech laws and the First Amendment, have things in place so you can expose things. Because if we were living in a country where, the internet was censored and all this other stuff, then someone like Nick Shirley wouldn't be able to even expose the fraud that happened in Minnesota. I mean, a lot of the times these people in power in the government, politicians on both sides, they want to stay in power. And one of the ways they're able to stay in power and to do all this corrupt stuff behind the scenes is by saying, well, you know what, you can't say that or you can't post that. And so that's the power of the internet. That's the power of free speech. And look at how much fraud he's, uncovered. People, have been saying stuff for years, but it took somebody who has a following to really expose things. And it took someone to put it out on social media for the ball to get rolling. And now if you look at it, people are investigating and saying, well, wait a minute, look at how much money's being wasted over here and how much money's being wasted over there. And so that's the power of free speech. That's why we have to protect free speech all the time. And not even just in that situation, but you have so many just individuals and folks around the world that are speaking out. And in my opinion, it's making things better. A lot of the politicians say, oh, well, you know what, this is causing problems and this and that. No, because they want to stay in power. Like, don't go for that lie. A lot of these politicians will do anything to stay in power. And if you look at North Korea and you look at some of these countries in the Middle East, that's how they stay in power. By censoring people, by saying you can't say certain things. And if you do say certain things, you go to jail or prison. And that's the last someone will hear of you. So, we don't want a country like that. And again, don't think it can't happen in America. Like, we're always quick to look at North Korea and say, oh, well, that'll never happen in America. If you get the wrong leaders, if you get folks that are, asleep and not paying attention, that can happen. And trust me, politicians would do that in a heartbeat. Politicians would change laws in a heartbeat to say you can't say certain things on social media. They would probably try to shut down Rumble. They would probably try to shut down Twitter if they could. I mean, so don't take certain things for granted. And that's just my opinion on free speech. If you're listening to this, that should be something you think about all the time. Like, we have to protect our First Amendment. We have to protect our First Amendment. We have to protect our First Amendment. I mean, without protecting that, we lose America. And so, again, I know I'm rambling, but, let me know, let me know your thoughts on free speech in America. I'd like to hear from you in the comment section. Again, you can follow my podcast by going to Spotify or Apple, wherever you listen to podcasts, and just type in Mark Parham Podcast. And just leave a comment and let me know, what you think about free speech in America. Thank you.